Hi everybody, it's Maria Fennerty with the Crested Butte Library. It's time for Read Aloud, which we do every Wednesday at 2:15. And for today, hopefully this is our last one. We're going to read for just an hour, and then next week, hopefully we'll be in person again. So I have a few things to tell you, and then we'll jump into our book, The Explorer. This is what we're reading today. We're about halfway through, so I'll give you a quick recap. But first I want to thank Simon & Schuster, our publisher, for giving us permission to read this aloud. Get this story out to all of you if you're not coming into the library lately. Let me make a couple announcements really quickly. We are open to the public. Everybody needs to know that we're open our regular hours. Our activities are just on pause for another week or so, hopefully. We'll go back to in-person. And that leads me to one of our first special events. I'll show you this poster up close. It is next Monday, the 31st. It's our Messy Monday time slot, which is 3:45 to 5:15. And we have a very exciting guest, a local author, Phil Coleman, wrote a new book, which is called The Quickborn Odyssey. It's a middle grades book that's a fantasy. It's a wonderful story. And he is going to be here for his book launch. So we are going to have Townie Books here for book signings. We're going to have snacks, and we're going to have a take and make craft with a contest that you can take home and then send a picture in of what you made, some kind of hopefully amazing, fantastical creature. And we'd love to see you. So this is our plan to start back up in our in-person activities. So all ages are welcome. It is a middle grades book. So Phil will read aloud, and this will be our next read aloud book. So after he comes to see us, then on the 2nd of February, we're going to jump right into this new book. And we will not, today will be our last book with The Explorer. So you are welcome to come and check this book out or put it on hold. There are currently 3 copies on the hold shelf, and that is on, if you come to the front desk at the Crested Butte Library and you want to check out The Explorer so you can either start over or finish the book, just ask for a copy from the CB Youth Programming section of the hold shelf. Whoever's working at the front desk will be able to help you with that, because I'd love you to finish it. It's a great book. And I'm also excited about the Quickborn Odyssey. Going forward in Read Aloud, we're going to read the beginnings of some books, some middle grade books, and then in order to give you a taste for as many interesting middle grade books as we can. So, what else? I have some wonderful books from our collection here, and I'm not going to take too much more time because I want to start reading the book. But there is, this is one of our easy readers with a nice blue sticker on it. These are books that are in a bin on the east side of the library. There are lots of books in those bins, and they are designed for first-time independent readers. They have a lot of wonderful graphics. And this one, called Rainforests, has a wonderful map. I love maps. I hope you do too. And I like how it shows where our story takes place today, which is in the Amazon rainforest. It's in that region along the equator where there are quite a few rainforests. So now you know, if you're new to our Read Aloud, that our story takes place in the Amazon. And I have some other pictures I was going to show you. Here's one right here. This is out of one of our nonfiction books from our juvenile nonfiction collection called The Wondrous Workings of Planet Earth. And because we're a small library, we have quite a few books that are a little more general rather than specific. So this book has wonderful graphics, and it has a little spread on the Amazon rainforest. Last week, you might have tuned in, and let's see if I can show you. Part of our story, we met a pink river dolphin, or a whole school of pink river dolphins that were part of our story. So this shows some of the animals in the rainforest. And this is also a great book you might want to come check out in the nonfiction section. We also have an encyclopedia of nature here, which is a wonderful book by DK. They have incredible photographs and information. So let's get started. For those of you that are new, our story is about the 4 children who are the main characters in the book that were on a plane flying over the Amazon rainforest when their plane crashed. And they have been working for the last probably about, I guess it's been maybe less than a week, but they have been in the rainforest trying to survive and figure out how to get home. They are resourceful and pretty ridiculous sometimes, a little bit annoying, but quite lovable. And they're trying to work out things between each other that they need to cooperate in order to survive. And so they're learning things about each other and about themselves as they work through these problems. Okay. One of the things we do during Read Aloud here in the library in person is I encourage the kids to have art supplies, which we provide, and I encourage them to draw while I'm reading. You can draw what you're learning about, what you're hearing about, if you want, but you can draw whatever you like. It's a nice way to relax and listen to a story and not get distracted by things around you. So anyway, I'm going to start reading. I think I have told you everything I wanted to. I also do a few vocabulary words. So when I get to words that I think either I learned new while I was reading this or something I think you might want to know, a word you might want to use, I'm going to show it to you, okay? All right. So this chapter is called The Explorer, just like the book. The explorer returned as they were roasting the karakara, squatting outside their stone room with the meat on sticks. He held a cluster of mangoes balanced along one arm and a gourd of water in the other. They didn't hear him until he was very close. Con jumped and dropped her hunk of bird in the ashes. The explorer did not look any of them in the eye. "You're still growing," he said gruffly, "especially the small one. It occurred to me the bird might not be enough." He flushed as he set the gourd down next to their fire, dropped the mangoes in Max's lap, and turned on his heel. So let me just interject that the specific backstory is after the kids crashed in the jungle, they built a raft and they had to use the raft to go down the river, and they found a map along the way in their adventures, and they followed the map to a point where they are now, which is after climbing a huge cliff, they got up onto this kind of plateau, which seems sort of like a ruins of an old city, an ancient civilization maybe. And to their surprise, there was a man there. And this is the very night that they met him, and they are hungry and tired and, of course, thirsty. And he's helping them a little bit reluctantly. And that's a good word, but I didn't write that down. Anyway, so this is about them getting to know the explorer and figuring out what they're going to do next. The explorer did not look Oh, I already read that. Sorry. Fred jumped to his feet. Please, just a minute. We wanted to ask, what is this place? Do other people know about it? Do you live alone here? Why, were you hoping to throw a garden party? I meant, do other people ever come? Sometimes, he said gruffly, people pass by this place, yes. The explorer squatted down, took Max's meat, which had caught fire, out of his hands, and shook it until it went out. He balanced it on the tips of his flame. He balanced it on the tips of the flames. None of them stay long. Some are traveling long distances. Tribes people whose ancestors lived here. They usually stay a few days. He twisted the chunk of bird. Juice dripped from it onto the fire. But yes, he said, in short, people do come. Con and Leela exchanged delighted glances. Baca, who was unusually full of energy for a sloth, he's a baby sloth, he waved one claw in the air. Would they help us? Asked Leela. Could they take us with them to Manaus? They might. Very possibly. It depends on the people. How often do they come? Asked Fred. Oh, every few years. He blew on the meat and handed it to Max. That's ready. Fred saw Leela and Con sag. They each looked a little more tired, a little older. Years? Said Leela. Our parents wouldn't be able to wait that long. No, I had imagined not, said the explorer. But in that case, began Con, couldn't you... He stopped as the vulture flapped out from behind a stone pillar and came to rest again against the man's knee. The man has a vulture as a pet. And there are king vultures in the Amazon rainforest that are like 35 inches tall, which is a little bit, or it's pretty close to 3 feet tall at their shoulder when they're standing on the ground. Let's see. The bird ruffled its wings and cawed. Con held her food closer to her chest. Leela took up her words. Could you help us get home? The explorer gave them an appraising, sharp-edged look. Perhaps, said Leela. I could point you toward Manaus. It's a month's walk, or a week and a half by canoe. I could give you some provisions and a map. I might come a short way with you. I'll have to see. Leela's eyes lit up. That would be absolutely But, said the explorer. But? Fred held his breath. You will have to swear never to speak about this place, never to tell that you saw a city in the jungle. More than swear, you will have to prove to me that you will not. What? Fred stared at the explorer and then out past him across at the stone world sprawling green and yellow and gold away from them into the jungle. Never tell about all this? Why? Or about me, ever, all of you, including the little one. Fred searched the explorer's face for evidence that he might be joking. But my father will ask where I was. Fred had already imagined the conversation they would have. How he would draw for his father the layout of the city, how he would pace out the distance of the city square and memorize the measurements, how his father would squeeze his shoulder and tell him he had done something remarkable. He had imagined his father telephoning his friend from Oxford, who worked at the Times. He had imagined his father's voice, Tim, listen, my son has done something extraordinary. The man was watching him. and his face was not sympathetic. "It is very likely," he said, "you will have to lie to him." So let me interject for a moment that this book was published by Simon & Schuster, and we are so grateful for permission to read this online. I forgot to say that at the beginning. But no, also, and here's another interjection. Fred, while quite terrified about the situation that he's in, he's the oldest of the four characters. He is also very excited about explorers. He's read a lot of books that explorers wrote, and so he's kind of in this strange situation where he's fighting to stay alive and to help his friends, and he's also really kind of enjoying the adventure. So that's a little backstory. So Fred says, "But no, the whole point of explorers is that they tell people about what they've found. That's what explorers do." "Exactly so. And I am not an explorer. I am a man who happens to be here." "But people have been talking about a place like this for hundreds of years," said Fred. "You have to let everyone know that they weren't just stupid old men with mad theories. They were right." "Why do I?" "Because if this place does exist, it means they weren't fools. It means they were heroes. It meant, though Fred did not say it, that it was not foolish, not mad, to dream of being an explorer himself. Heroes don't exist, boy. They're inventions made up of newsprint and quotable lines and photogenic mustaches." He grunted in disgust. "Can't bear mustaches myself. Grotesquerie, mouth eyebrows, I always thought." "That's not true. Men died looking for something like this. They died wanting to prove to the world it existed." "But you're wrong. The world deserves to know." "People have died for many things," said the explorer. "It is not difficult to die." Fred felt his forehead burning. He knew he must be turning red, but if they told his name and Leela's and Con's and Max's, they would be part of history. Their names would be included in the list of great discoveries. As if he had read his thought, the explorer curled his lip. "And you, perhaps, wish to be the one to tell them?" Fred's head jerked backward as if the man had flicked boiling water in his face. "It's not that." The explorer blinked, a slow, contemptuous blink. "Isn't it?" Fred clenched one fist. "It would be selfish not to tell." "Would it?" said the explorer. For the first time, Fred realized the others were not joining in. Con sat looking down at her hands. Leela was stroking Baca with unusual intensity, and Max was sucking his wrist, his mouth turned down at the corners. "Fred," said Leela. Her voice was very quiet, and she didn't look at him. "We need to go home." Con moved closer to him. She whispered hotly in his ear, "You're being ridiculous. Just promise whatever he wants to get us out of here." "No," said Fred, and he edged away from her. Con's whisper became a hiss. "We can still tell everyone when we get home. How's he going to know? He's hardly going to be getting newspapers out here." "No," said Fred out loud. "I'm not promising anything." The explorer rose, lit red by the flames of the fire. The light shone on the scars in the crook of his elbow and on his knuckles. "I have asked you to perform an easy task, to keep your mouths shut. You are refusing?" "No," said Con. We'll do whatever you want. Fred, for goodness sake, just say it." "You can't keep a secret," said Fred. "It's not your secret to keep." "Look," said Con to the explorer, He might not promise, but we will. Can't you help us at least? He can stay here for all I care. But the explorer's face was growing red at the neck and white around the nose and mouth. His whole face cross-hatched with anger. You, he glanced at Fred, are a fame-hungry, thin-brained ignoramus. And you, he glared at Con, would apparently happily desert your friend. You disgust me, the lot of you. And there's our first word, ignoramus. I think you can probably guess what that means. He's calling Fred a stupid or ignorant person. In fact, he's sort of saying that to all of them. He's not my friend. Not now. Quiet. Keeping his temper did not seem to be the explorer's specialty. His voice rose to a roar. I see no reason to help any of you. Why should I? Good God, if children had any use, we surely would have discovered it by now. He turned away. He shoved his fists into his pockets and then drew something out. Oh, I'd forgotten. I brought you this. I had not expected your response to my request. None of you deserves it. Max let out a mew and curled up his knees. The explorer dropped the thing on the ground and strode into the dark. He reached the wall they'd fallen down and began to climb it fast, using both arms and only one leg, the other swinging loosely at his side. Fred, said Con, you're completely unfair, and you're welcome to die here yourself, but you've got no right to ruin everything for the rest of us. Max began to sniff and hiccup with the beginnings of tears. Fred picked up the thing the explorer had dropped. It was a screw of soft leaves, fastened at the top with thick grass. He opened it. Inside was a pinch of salt, mixed with some flakes of dried green something. It's seasoning, he said, for the bird. Stop changing the subject, snapped Con. Look, you've got to agree. Go and run after him and tell him you've changed your mind. I can't. Why not? You don't have to actually do it. You just have to say it. I just can't. He thought of his father. He thought of the going back to school. Not just that Peterson boy, the one with no mother, but a boy who faced down the jungle and discovered a whole world. Please, Fred, said Leela, please do what Con says. Run after him. Our parents will be so worried. They might die of it. Max's eyes widened, and Leela sighed. I didn't mean it, Max. It's an expression. Leela and Max are brother and sister, and Max is only 5. It's too late anyway, said Fred. You heard him. He won't help any of us now. He's too angry. Because you made him too angry, said Con. So did you, snapped Fred. You can do whatever you want. I'm not swearing to a lie, all right? What, because you think you're so high and moral? Max covered his ears with both hands. No, because I won't, all right? Because it would be lying about the most important thing that's ever happened to me. He'd never know. You just want to get your name in the papers. And that's our second vocabulary word, which is moral. Moral is having to do the right and wrong behavior, or goodness or badness of people's behavior. So moral, which is a pretty important word, is part of what Fred is fighting for. He thinks it's important to not lie. And he's going to stick to it, it seems like. Yes, he would. He would find out, wouldn't he? Because people would have to come and try to find it again, to take photographs and do archaeological digs. I don't care what happens once I'm home. This whole place can burn, Con said. Stop it, shouted Leela. Her voice rang through the clearing. They turned to her in surprise. She does not raise her voice very much. Shut up, both of you. Every inch of her body was stiff with anger. You're both being disgusting. If it's too late, then there's no point in fighting. And if you make Max cry again, I swear I'll punch you both. Max climbed into Leela's lap and buried his face in Baca's fur. Fred swallowed. He tried to recatch his temper. He held out the seasoning. Do you want some? We might as well eat. No, it could be poisonous, said Con. Fred withdrew his meat from the fire. It was black in patches, and the skin was charred and steaming. He pulled off the skin with his fingers, wincing at the heat, and sprinkled a pinch of the salt and unknown herbs onto the bird. Defiantly, averting his eyes from Con's glare, he took a bite. The first taste of it shot through his whole body. It was a flavor that got into your fingertips. Hot and rich and wild. Not poisonous, he said. It's good. I hope you choke on it, said Con. Soon it was entirely dark, but for the fire and the moon. The flames cast light out into the city square, throwing its corners into strange, dusky shapes. Con shivered as a cloud swept past over the moon, lengthening the shadows. Leela hunched over and began to search Baca's fur for ticks, avoiding Fred's eye. Fred looked toward the curtain of vines. They hung in the dark, a great green sweep of shadow covering the right corner of the square. What do you think's behind there? He asked. What do you think he doesn't want us to see? I don't know, said Con, and I don't care. She had brushed her hair in front of her eyes so nobody could see her face. It could be an animal, said Leela. She glanced up and then away. A panther, like in the Jungle Book? It might be food stores, said Fred. Max sat up. Real food? Why would he keep it there? Said Leela. Well, I was thinking there must have been a place for storing food when this city was alive. And it's where I'd keep stores, somewhere almost invisible. Fred looked around, checking that the explorer was nowhere near. I think we should go and look. Oh, sure, that's a great idea, said Con. You've already made him so angry he's going to let us rot here. Why not add stealing his food? He could kill you with his bare hands, but I'm sure that doesn't worry you. I wouldn't steal. It would be borrowing, and even then, not unless we have to. What do you mean, have to? If he won't help us, we might have to find other ways. To do what? Said Con. To find enough supplies to start the journey to Manaus. Fred gestured around the empty city. There's not much food here. Con was growing red. You do know this is your fault. You said if we followed the map, we'd get home, and then the second you get here, you ruin it. I didn't. Fred could feel his neck and cheeks flushing. I didn't expect the map to lead to a madman with a pet vulture living alone in an ancient city. That's not something any of us predicted. You promised we'd get home. We will get home, said Fred, though he was fairly sure he hadn't promised. Who was he to promise anything? But he only said, I want to know. Aren't you curious? No, said Con. She swiveled on her bottom and turned her back to him. He could see the sharp thinness of her shoulder blades poking out through her blouse. He would never find out. If he could find food, Fred thought, then it wouldn't matter what the explorer said or did. They could get back on the raft and go looking for Manaus. If he could find food, then the chill of Con's anger and Leela's disappointment might be swept away. Do what you want. I'm not going over there, said Con. Leela? Asked Fred. Leela had been watching them argue, her head turning from one to the other, her eyes growing steadily more unhappy. It's getting dark. He wouldn't see us. Do you want to come? Leela hesitated. I don't know. He trusted us. But he doesn't. He clearly doesn't trust us at all. He won't even tell us his name, please, said Fred. The wall of vines hung like a threat in the corner of the city square. It's just to look. Leela looked out across the dark square. Fine, okay, I'll come. Thank you. Fred jumped to his feet. Are you sure, Con? Very, very sure. Could you look after Max? Said Leela. He's not yet figured out how silence works, really. Con agreed, though without much pleasure. Fred and Leela moved slowly across the square, feeling their way in the half-dark. In between the avenue of trees, the ground was smooth, entirely free of weeds and leaves and jungle debris. But on either side there were piles of stones, 2 half-ruined circular mud buildings that looked like grain stores, and shoots of growing things springing up everywhere. What do you think this was? Fred asked. I don't know, but if this was a city square, then those statues would be their town monuments, or maybe their gods. Like we have lions in Trafalgar Square? At the thought of them, a gust of longing for home swept over him. So here is a vocabulary name. Trafalgar Square is something that you might want to look up and see what it looks like, because to Fred, this means home, and it's making him a little melancholy to think about a place that he has been before that is not like the jungle at all. So, in person, during Read Aloud, we would take a break and maybe look this up in an encyclopedia online and see what we could learn, or Google images so we could see a picture of what it looks like. So, Trafalgar Square might be something you want to look up. Yes, Leela said, our papa talks about them, and then everyone could live round the sides of the Central Avenue or up in the jungle in tree houses. That's how I'd do it, anyway. He's crazy to tell us to keep it secret, said Fred. It's amazing. It's not like anything I've ever seen in my life. He glanced at Leela from the corner of his eye. He can't keep it all for himself. Leela didn't reply. She only stared fixedly ahead. There was the sound of footsteps running behind them. Fred sprang round, but it was Con, with Max in tow. We changed our minds, said Con, panting hard, but we're not talking to you. She made me come, said Max. She saw a shadow and thought it was a snake. I didn't, you little rat. Leela and Fred exchanged glances. You'll have to be quiet, Maxie, said Leela. I'm always quiet, said Max with dignity. He turned to put his tongue out at his sister, tripped on a stone, and let out a howl loud enough to wake the sleeping birds. My toe! Shush, said Leela. A tree rustled, then stilled abruptly. Con looked around nervously. Should we go back? Fred shook his head. You can, he said. I need to see. As they approached the far end of the square, the clouds moved over the moon, sweeping black shadows over the statues' faces. They looked alive. Behind the statues ran a great mud and stone wall high over their heads. The left edge of the wall ended in a crumbling ruin, overrun with patches of light yellow flowers. The right side vanished in a curtain of vines, the vines the explorer had forbidden them from touching. Fred approached the vines. They rustled. He stepped backward. It might have been the wind or something living behind them. He tried not to think of snakes. He reached out and pushed a handful of vines away. Leela joined him. Behind the vines was another, thicker curtain. They seemed braided together like wicker work, woven so densely. Fred could hardly fit a hand through the green mass. He pushed both arms into the vines, elbow deep, and tugged. There was a flash of color amid the green. Then the vines fell back. I can see something, he hissed. Shh, said Con. What? Said Leela. I don't know, a piece of yellow. I can't see it anymore. We'll have to cut the vines, he said. He took the knife from his pocket. No, wait, said Con. I don't know if that's a good idea. It is, said a voice over their heads. An exceptionally bad idea. Fred froze. There was the smack of shoe on stone, and the explorer jumped down from the top of the wall, landing inches in front of Fred's face, grunting as his bad leg hit the ground. He straightened up, his face rigid with fury. I asked you to stay away, he said softly. Is that so difficult? A cold dread shot through Fred. The look on the explorer's face was worse than being caned at school. I'm really sorry. Fred's tongue was suddenly dry. We just thought... You thought? Are you so grotesquely lacking in self-control that you cannot let a single idle thought pass through your minds without acting on it? This is our last vocabulary word. Fury. I think as I finish this chapter in the next couple minutes, you will be able to figure out what fury is if you don't know right now. Okay? F-U-R-Y. We're so sorry, began Leela. Just get away from here, said the explorer. His skin radiated hot rage. Desperation was rising in Fred's blood. He could see Max shaking with fear. He stepped in front of him. We weren't going to take anything, he said. He felt the burn of the lie flood through him and stumbled over the words. We just needed to see. I said, go, just go. It was my fault, said Fred. It was my idea, not theirs. I don't care whose idea it was. The explorer pulled the knife from his belt. He pointed it at Fred's chest. Go to bed. If I ever find you anywhere near the vines again, I'll cut off your fingers while you sleep and fry them in banana oil and feed them to the vulture for dessert. Fred turned and led the way back down the center of the boulevard, shame pulsing in his chest. Even Max didn't make a sound. Well, that was an exciting chapter. That's all we're going to read in this part of Read Aloud. We have one more chapter to read. I wanted to suggest two things for you. There are wonderful encyclopedia websites that you can use to learn more about rainforests, or I looked up vultures today and learned about the king vulture that lives in the Amazon. So Britannica.com is one of those websites, and the other one is worldbookonline.com. So both of these have kids sections in them, and it's a little bit different than Google. It's specifically designed for learning information quickly and easily, and there are videos, there's wonderful things. So I just wanted to share that with you, and thanks for coming today. Have a good day.